I will first and foremost support the policy direction that the Honorable Minister, who has the oversight over the power sector generally, has talked about. But I would like to just highlight a few things. First, 85% of electricity consumers are not affected by the rate review. That's one. Secondly, the rate review that has taken place is pro-poor rate review. I can provide further explanation on that. But before I do that, the Honorable Minister mentioned one figure, which is correct. That prior to review, 67% of the cost of generation, transmission, and distribution was being subsidized by the government. And I want you to take the word generation, transmission, and distribution, because I will now provide another perspective. So I quoted the Honorable Minister first so that you don't report any contradiction. I want to provide another perspective to it. In January, the generation invoice was 240 billion to the DISCOs. DISCos were only mandated to pay 24 billion. That is 10%. So that tells you that 90% of the generation cost, in this case, you know, I didn't mention transmission and distribution so that you don't think that the figures are different. 90% of the generation cost was being borne by the government, okay? And I think a lot has gone into discussion around how much it amounts to over a year. The Honorable Minister has also spoken to that. So with this, and out of that, now with the review, that means that about 50% of the generation cost will now still be subsidized by the government. Okay? So what that tells you, 90 minus 50 tells you that there is a reduction of about 40% by reviewing the rate to the elites practically. That means that 50% of Nigerian customers account for 40% subsidy on the generation cost. Now the government has said that, okay, this elite, because it's clear, the type of infrastructure, the sophistication of the infrastructure in Maitama is different from the sophistication of infrastructure in Yanyan. And the people living in areas like Maitama, Azokoro, and so on, Ikoyi of this world, they are richer than other people, and they have heavy energy consuming appliances. So that if you as a person or ordinary Nigerian consumes 1 kilowatt hour, let's say per day or over 1 hour, these people will consume multiples of that. That means that they benefit more from the subsidy. So now what we have done is to now say, okay, let the people that need this subsidy actually be the one to benefit. And the Honorable Minister has talked about some of the gains that will come if the government is relieved of this fiscal burden of about 1.4 trillion naira reduction. We have health, we have education, and we have other sector. Then we have investment need in the sector. And he has also talked about many technical things which we talked about previously, that we need to incentivize investment. If there is no path to recovery, nobody will come and invest. The pricing is essential. It may be painful at the beginning, but it will definitely be beneficial. So this subsidy that we've introduced, this subsidy reduction and the rate review we have introduced is pro-poor. I think that's important for me to point out. And the Honorable Minister has said something about compliance, because I know that's the question that has come up repeatedly. We are committed. NERC was limited in terms of its ability to enforce compliance in the last Electric Power Sector Reform Act. The previous act was a reform act. It was good to midwife the reform processes. There were two, if you read the act very well, that particular act, there are two places where enforcement by the regulator was mentioned. Enforcement by the regulator was mentioned. One is enforcement related to terms and conditions of license of any licensee. That is, if you violate your terms and conditions of your license, the regulator can only sanction you by the way of 10,000 naira per day. If you violate the order or the regulations of the commission, the regulator can only fine you 10,000 naira. In 28, of course, we did some enforcement. Then 50,000 million naira fine to Ibadan Disco, 14 to I think Benin Discos, and so on and so forth. But in 2018, we suspended the board of Ibadan Disco. Suspended, not sacked. They took us to court, and the court said we didn't have power. But with the new Electricity Act, the power has been greatly improved. In January, we removed the board of Kaduna Disco. They couldn't go to court. Today, because yesterday, and I think most likely is a question that will come at this, because it relates to the issues that has been trending online. We've tried to address that, explainer, and so on and so forth. But let me quickly address it. Today, we issue an order to Abuja Disco to pay 200 million naira fine for violation of the order that we are discussing today. The fine, of course, when it is paid, is going to the Rural Electrification Fund in line with the provision of the Act. It doesn't belong to the Commission, and there is a wisdom in that, so that we don't turn ourselves to revenue generating agents because we don't want to improve our own personal liquidity. And what led to that, I will explain now. You are all aware, I think it's been reported in the media, that some customers have complained that they are not enjoying 20 hours of supply, and they've gone to vent, and they are charged the new rates. There are two scenarios. There is Abuja scenario, and there are other disco scenarios. Because we began in, we follow your feedback. We really appreciate you. We began investigation immediately. Abuja scenario that led to this was an unpardonable excuse or error. What happened was, immediately the order was released. Rationally, they did something they needed to do. But what they now did was, they applied the rate to all the customers, regardless of their bands. So, yeah. So what now happened is, because rationally customers will go and fend to beat the implementation of the rate, immediately they hear the news. Some customers were lucky. I've heard a news about the customer that was able to buy 7,000 units of energy, 10,000 kilowatt hour at the whole rate, and is enjoying 20 hours of supply. But there are customers that are not supposed to be affected because they've messed up the process. Those customers went and they were getting the new rate. So what the Commission has done is, first, they are saying it's error, it's error. The question is, if it was error, if it was an error, why didn't you make an error that we reduce the tariff for all the customers? It's an unpardonable error. So they've been fined 200 million naira first. The second action is that in the same order, we've asked them to refund all the customers that are affected. They will be sending the right tokens to the customer in addition to the token the customer already got. So the differential they will be sending to the customers, they've been given till next week because they are still currently working on cleaning up the mess. So I think I need to point out that the second scenario, which has happened in some other discos, is this. Rationally, the Commission announced the review of tariff for 15% of customers. There are places that customers themselves, if they want to be truthful, they say that they are enjoying 20 hours. There are places that are not enjoying 20 hours and they are not affected by the rate. So, but customers will definitely rush rationally to go and fend and build the implementation just because before the disco starts. So that happened. Some were lucky, some were not lucky in some other disco. So what happened in some other disco is that because the non-band A customers, they are not affected, not much problem in that case, unlike Abuja. Because what the discos do was immediately the announcement was also made, they have 3 options. And I believe if we are rational, we'll also reason with them. One of the options they have is, the regulator has announced the price review. I'm sure customer will want to rush and build the implementation. Let me protect my revenue, mitigate the revenue loss. 3 options are open. Shut down the platform until you effect the rate change. That will cause a serious chaos. Second option to them is limit the amount of energy a customer can vent so that you mitigate the effect. That also has its own implication. The third one will be that NERC only by A are affected. Only by A customers are affected. Change and they had an existing band A customers, like the case of Abuja, or I can take the case of Ikeja. They have about 200 or thereabout band A feeders in the original one. So what they will do is change the tariff for all the band A feeders first and begin to clean up the feeders, reduce the feeders that NERC has said, no, I only allow you 45 feeders. Now, take it out, take the other feeders out. So in the process of doing that, any customer that also goes to fend in that disco, and the customers was classified as band A before, will definitely be cut off by the higher rate. So on that note, I think I've tried as much as possible to explain, but we have also issued directives to all the discos, publish the feeders affected, communicate the customers, and any customers that have been cut off by this wrong application of bill, you have to refund them. And now we like to appeal to Nigerians that have been affected. Please keep your facts. Keep your facts. If per chance any disco, your disco does not refund you, please contact NERC. They have up until next week, Thursday, to refund the customers that have been wrongly billed. Thank you so much.
The numbers, the contact number.
Okay. We will publish the contact number. We have the call center. Then we have complaints@nerc.gov.ng. Complaints@nerc.gov.ng. Then we have a situation room. Our media people are here. We will definitely publish the contact phone numbers on our website, and we also advertise in the national dailies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Power. I want to really appreciate the presentation. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen,